as the old saying goes, there's a right way to do things, there's a wrong way to do things, and there's the Oakland way to do things.
Before I voice my frustration, let me just say this.
It's your baby.
Let me just say this. I am totally disappointed in terms of how we have utilized the system. I think the council had greater expectation that the system would be used, that the dispatchers would be dispatching when there's a shot fired, not just every once in a while, but every time that shot was fired. I've heard from some of the troops out on the ground that says that we're not using this incredible technology, and we don't have a dedicated person assigned to this, like in some other jurisdictions that have the system in place. It's part of their best practice in these municipalities that are using Shotspotter. I just need you, Chief, to tell me you don't want this system and that we're not going to use it the way it is, so we can figure out whether or not we're going to continue to fund it, or whether or not we can just say, thanks, but no thanks. We don't need the system because we are not doing the things that we need to do to take advantage of the system and utilize it the way it was intended to use. I know we've put it in 6 mobile vehicles, but heck, I'm just really frustrated. I mean, my staff and we both did thorough research on the system. It makes to me, I thought it made logical sense, but evidently, it's not making logical sense for us to have a system and we don't utilize it. And with all due respect, I'm just totally frustrated.
What I remember is that we were going to try this as a trial basis in one area, and it got spread probably a little larger than we expected, and then we had the problem with how we're going to use it. But I guess what confuses me is that even if you don't have the Shotspotter, usually you get calls on gunshots. Well, maybe not in some neighborhoods, but most neighborhoods you would, and you'd have to respond to it anyhow. And so that's where I was looking at what the cost analysis are. But I do think it is the issue of the cost analysis long term, if you don't have the people. And that's what I was going to ask. So are you asking just to keep it at this level, and now that you've got the laptops and you have some greater usability, just leave it at now? Or do you foresee a time when you're going to ask for an expansion in the funding? And if so, then I think the expectations have to be really clear, because this is going to be a very bad year and we're going to be cutting a lot of programs, and even to add it into a CIP list that would be 2 or 3 years down the line, I think we'd still have to have a pretty clear rationale. Because of how it is so hard to figure out where a shot happens in the city, it was one of the reasons why I was willing to back the original pilot. But I also think we really weren't clearly told what the maximum cost would be to bring it to full scale. Because I remember when we made that decision, it was like the last thing we added to the budget. And if we knew that was really in the long term going to be nearly a $3 million project, we might have thought twice about just putting so little in on something that would really not be effective until we got over $2 million. And that would have been helpful to know.
And looking back at the reports of the Shotspotter from when they were first presented, it was certainly not clear from that report that there was a need for a couple $1 million to actually make it fully operational. Yes, it was a startup program. Yes, it was a pilot program. But if you don't have all of the cost in a report, it is difficult to make the proper decision. And ultimately, that's part of what you need to start doing, is holding staff accountable to have that kind of detail in the reports. Thank you.
My name is Greg Rowland. I'm the Senior Vice President of the company. I'm responsible for Homeland Security and Public Safety practice worldwide. And I was involved and came and spoke to a number of you when you started looking at the Shotspotter system. A couple of comments I just want to make is that we have been collecting some data on the use of the system in Oakland. And I think I have to support the chief in saying that we have detected a lot of gunfire in the city. And we have not seen a lot of dispatching because of the amount of resources required. This is not a simple call to go out on.
I'd like to say a couple things. At the time the council authorized it, I made it very apparent that in its best iteration for us to manually or to get the best possible use out of Shotspotter, we would have to have a dedicated unit or units dedicated within those patrol areas in which this technology would be operative. There was no staff that were provided for it. But without dedicated staff in order to do this, now keep in mind, when this thing goes off, you're asking someone to to drive into an area where you know a gunshot has occurred. And when you do that, your expectations are that you're going to encounter some armed person. And in the encounter of an armed person, we're going to ask that we get multiple units to respond to this. Any given day of the week, get out there on the air. These things happen in the nighttime. These things happen in the nighttime when the biggest demand for our calls are. If we're able to do these operations, we're able to do them where we have dedicated staff doing them, I think we're much more successful. Using them as a mobile item is far more likely that we'll have the responses that you want. But again, I submit to you, sir, that we need to have enough staff to be able to do this so that we can have officer safety and public safety at the same time.
I understand that, Chief, but I was hoping that you would have dedicated someone to oversee the system when we've invested so much money into it.
I think in the months to come, if we have adequate staff, if we get to 300 in a patrol division, the large probability is that we'll have enough power squads out that we'll be able to say, you're going to do nothing but Shotspotter tonight. That's your assignment. As it exists today, we don't have the number of power squads in order to be able to do that.
That last time, we ended up not using the technology to the extent that, to its fullest effect, because we didn't have staff to deploy to those locations, or there was some kind of lack of clarity about, what were the most important places for the officers to be going.
And Reagan Harmon, who was then on my staff, can testify what was told to us then. That if you don't have somebody internally within OPD that's going to take ownership of this, then, we're going to still deal with the problems that we dealt with in the first place. So, Ursi, I don't know if you're going to be the one that the chief designate to take ownership of this project, but I certainly hope you are, because then I know the outcome that we're looking for is one that's truly is going to happen. So, Chief, I'm going to tell you, you've got to have somebody within OPD to take ownership of this, of the Shotspotter system, if it is to be effective and if it's to bear fruit the way we would all like it to bear. So,
just so you know, I am a big supporter and proponent of Shotspotter, and that it will be done efficiently, and you don't need someone else other than me to stay connected to it, because I am a driver of it, and the way that we can do it in the future, I think, will be a very positive for us, even better than what it was in the prior.
I know that one of the conversations that I've had with the chief, and I believe some other folks have had as well, is around what it would take from police staffing to be able to consistently respond to all the Shotspotter incidents. And I know that that's a discussion that I understand will be continuing. That was estimated it would be about $1 million a year to staff up something like that.
And we don't have a dedicated person assigned to this.
We didn't have staff to deploy to those locations.
We don't need the system because we are not doing the things that we need to do to take advantage of the system and utilize it the way it was intended to use.
One of the biggest problems we had last time was we didn't have the staff to monitor the system. The second problem was that we had a lot of what we call false alerts.
There was no staff that were provided for it.
And so there's no one that is dedicated to this system.
And we have not seen a lot of dispatching because of the amount of resources required.
I was hoping that you would have dedicated someone to oversee the system when we've invested so much money into it. That if you don't have somebody internally within OPD that's going to take ownership of this, then, we're going to still deal with the problems that we dealt with in the first place. So,
but again, I submit to you, sir, that we need to have enough staff to be able to do this so that we can have officer safety and public safety at the same time.
Just say this, I am totally disappointed in terms of how we have utilized the system.
It would be about $1 million a year.
Long term, going to be nearly a $3 million project. We might have thought twice about just putting so little in on something that would really not be effective until we got over $2 million. And that would have been helpful to know.
It was certainly not clear from that report that there was a need for a couple $1 million to actually make it fully operational.
It's my frustration. But hey, I'm just really frustrated. Totally frustrated. I just want you to understand that, again, I'm just really frustrated. I'm understand your frustration. I certainly understand my frustration because just very frustrating.
No, it's pretty obvious I'm frustrated.
I know you are.
Little doubt that that's the case.
As the old saying goes, there's a right way to do things, there's a wrong way to do things, and there's the Oakland way to do things.